Last year and this year have seen an unusually large number of wildfires. The worst wildfires on record in Australia in 2019 and 2020 burned more than 10 million hectares of land, roughly the size of South Korea, and hundreds of millions of animals were affected, either killed or displaced by the fires. In addition to the record-breaking wildfires on the U.S. island of Maui, Hawaii, Canada and Spain are also struggling with unprecedented wildfires. In Spain, a massive wildfire has been raging on the popular vacation island of Tenerife in the Canary Islands for nearly a week, with more than 16,000 hectares of forest destroyed to date. In Canada, the massive blaze has stretched as far as Yellowknife, the capital of Canada's Northwest Territories. Kelowna, a city in the southwest corner of the country, has also suffered significant damage, with many homes destroyed by fire, and the Canadian wildfires have burned 140,000 square kilometers, an area equivalent to the entire state of New York. There have been reports that global warming is to blame for this dramatic increase in wildfires. In today's Legacy Voices, we take a look at the reasons for the increase in wildfires and what can be done about it. The United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP, released a report on wildfires ahead of the United Nations Environment Assembly in Nairobi in February 2022, blaming global warming for the spike in large fires. Experts warn that the number of wildfires will increase by 50% by 2100 and governments will not be prepared. They go on to say that even areas of the Arctic that are not previously at risk of wildfires are facing increased risk. Experts say wildfires and climate change are feeding off each other, making both worse. Climate change and land use change are expected to increase the frequency and intensity of wildfires, with a global increase in extreme wildfires of up to 14% by 2030, 30% by the end of 2050, and 50% by the end of this century. As a result, governments around the world need to fundamentally shift their investments in wildfire protection to focus on prevention and preparedness. Currently, globally, more than 50% of wildfire investment is spent on response, while less than 1% is spent on initiatives that could reduce wildfires. Therefore, when governments invest in wildfires, they should spend 2/3 of the money on planning, prevention, preparedness, and recovery, and 1/3 on response. Inger Anderson, Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP, said, "Current government responses to wildfires often put money in the wrong places. We need to minimize the risk of extreme wildfires through better preparedness. We need to invest more in fire risk reduction, work with communities, and strengthen global commitments to combat climate change." In other words, we should be investing more in prevention, rather than spending money after the fact to put out fires and repair the damage. So, what are the conditions that favor wildfires? Wildfires are affected by three main conditions: atmosphere, vegetation, and ignition. First, the atmosphere plays a big role in determining how susceptible an area is to wildfires. For example, wind can intensify a wildfire by increasing the oxygen supply in the area, or it can move embers elsewhere. Second, vegetation, where drier areas can catch fire more easily, and areas with more forests or shrubs can provide more fuel for potential fires. Third, ignition, where areas prone to volcanic activity or lightning storms may be more susceptible to wildfires, and human activities such as camping can also trigger ignitions. In general, however, wildfires are increasing in duration and intensity as a result of climate change. Wildfires are a good example of a feedback loop. Since the 1850s, global surface temperatures have risen by about 1.1 degrees Celsius, and rising temperatures have led to less snow cover and earlier spring starts, increasing the time available for fires to start. These fires are known to cause a lot of natural and economic damage, but they also emit a lot of carbon that contributes to global warming. So how much carbon is actually emitted during a wildfire? In 2021, wildfires around the world released an estimated 1.76 billion tons of carbon into the atmosphere. That's more than twice the annual emissions of the entire country of Germany. The problem is that the carbon emitted has a global warming effect, causing atmospheric temperatures to rise again, which in turn leads to more wildfires and more carbon emissions, creating a vicious feedback loop. In other words, wildfires and climate change are exacerbating each other. Especially when areas like peatlands and tropical rainforests burn, they release more carbon and cause more extreme temperature increases. In other words, it's a vicious cycle, but what are the effects of another wildfire? As I mentioned earlier, this feedback loop doesn't end with a wildfire, but with the normalization of extreme weather. With more carbon emissions, extreme weather events are now the norm, not just wildfires, but more droughts, heat waves, and floods. And when we look at the direct impact of wildfires, we see that they have a huge impact on poor countries. The economic damage caused by wildfires increases social inequality. Second, there are direct health impacts from inhaling wildfire smoke, causing respiratory and cardiovascular effects in vulnerable populations. Third, pollutants from wildfires degrade watersheds and cause soil erosion, causing many waterway problems. Fourth, the waste left behind by wildfires is highly contaminated and difficult to dispose of. Fifth, wildlife and natural habitats are rarely spared from wildfires, pushing some species close to extinction. A recent example is the 2020 wildfires in Australia, which wiped out billions of livestock and wildlife. This is why experts say governments need to be proactive in their wildfire policies, which require a combination of policies, legal frameworks, and incentives to encourage appropriate land and fire use, for example, and ecosystem restoration. Taken together, wildfires cause economic, environmental, and social damage, so what can we do to prevent them? The experts have 9 suggestions. The first is to recognize and respond to the impact of climate change on wildfires. Climate change is increasing the likelihood of wildfires in many regions, so we need to fulfill the commitments of the Paris Agreement. The second is the need to better understand the behavior of wildfires in different ecosystems and in a changing climate, so that countries can collect and analyze consistent fire data to manage fuels and prevent ignitions. Third, policies and incentives that promote integrated fire management approaches are needed to effectively address the increase in wildfires. Fourth, it is important to integrate indigenous and local traditions with modern fire management practices, rather than rejecting them out of hand. Fifth, there is a need for increased international and regional cooperation on wildfires. The greatest potential for wildfire management is through continued international exchange, joint problem solving, and sharing of experiences in wildfire management and research. What these 5 points have in common is that they are preceded by a better understanding of wildfire in a changed environment. Sixth, there is a need to shift investment priorities to proactive wildfire mitigation and management, where targeted investments are made to reduce the risk of future wildfires. Seventh, we need to empower communities and local authorities. Eighth, improve firefighter safety. Firefighter casualties have been on the rise in recent fires, and there are a number of safety improvements that can be made to reduce the number of casualties. Finally, recognizing gender risks in wildfires can help policymakers adopt more effective and robust approaches to wildfire management to improve the safety of their constituents, including women firefighters. Ultimately, preventing wildfires and preserving forests through these methods and others can help to halt climate change and improve human lives. Socio-national efforts are also critical to reducing wildfires. As we continue to experience dry conditions around the world, it is important that we follow fire prevention rules, as wildfires and global warming are closely linked, and efforts to prevent both are necessary. The majority of wildfires are started by humans, so we need to work to stop them in their tracks by increasing awareness campaigns around tobacco use, burning near forests, and increasing fines and penalties for those who break the rules and start wildfires. Creating fire-resistant forests is another way to prevent large wildfires. The denser the trees in a forest, the greater the risk of a wildfire spreading, and conifers are more susceptible to wildfires than hardwoods. In addition, to prevent global warming, individual efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions are required, such as reducing the use of plastics and garbage, thoroughly separating garbage, and reducing unnecessary energy consumption. Forests provide humans with a variety of food and wood materials, purify the air, and protect the planet from warming. These forests, which are so beneficial to humans and essential to human life, are suffering from human activities. It is imperative that we all work together to protect them. It's clear that humanity has opened the hell gates, now it's time to try to close them. Thank you for watching, and that's all from Legacy Voices. Thank you. Bye.